Colonel Kevin Wright stood at the window of Fort Liberty's command center, his eyes fixed on the massive alien ships hanging in the orange sky of New Eden. The morning had started like any other day on the colony world, but everything changed when the Zaxxarian warships appeared. "Sir, they're broadcasting again," said Communications Officer Lisa Moore, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Same message as before." Wright nodded, his weathered face showing no sign of fear. The 7th Marine Expeditionary Unit had trained for many scenarios, but first contact with an alien empire wasn't one of them. He turned to face the holographic display where Ambassador Susan Carter was waiting. "They're not backing down, Colonel," Carter said, adjusting her glasses. "The Zaxxarian ambassador just called us, and I quote, primitive beings barely worthy of servant status." She paused, letting out a deep breath. "They want an answer in the next hour." The command center buzzed with activity as Marines and colonial defense staff worked at their stations. Outside, Wright could see his troops taking positions across the colony's main settlement. 5 years of working with these men and women told him they were ready for anything. The alien message played again through the speakers. "Attention, inferior human forces. This is High Commander Vex Thor of the Zaxxarian Empire. Your species has been deemed unworthy of independent status. Surrender your weapons and submit to Imperial authority, or face immediate pacification." Wright watched as another massive ship joined the others in orbit. The aliens' arrogance was clear in every word they spoke. They hadn't even bothered to scan for defensive installations or assess human military capabilities. "Ambassador," Wright said, "please inform High Commander Vex Thor that the United Earth Marine Corps does not surrender to anyone." He turned to his staff. "Sound General Quarters. I want all units at full combat readiness." Sergeant Frank Cooper's voice crackled over the radio. "Colonel, my teams report the aliens are landing dropships outside the defensive perimeter. They're not even trying to hide their movements." "Looks like they expect us to just give up," Wright said. He pulled up the tactical display, watching as red dots appeared across the map. The aliens were making every basic mistake in the book, clustering their forces in open terrain and ignoring obvious defensive positions. Ambassador Carter tried one last time to prevent bloodshed. Her hologram showed her speaking with the alien representative, a tall, purple-skinned being who looked down at her with 4 eyes full of contempt. "High Commander," Carter said, "we urge you to reconsider. Humanity has a long history of warfare. We don't want unnecessary conflict." The alien leader laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. "Your species still uses projectile weapons and armored vehicles. Our empire has conquered 1,000 worlds. Your primitive technology cannot harm our advanced shields and armor." Wright checked his tablet as reports came in from his unit commanders. The 7th MBU was in position, their weapons ready. Lieutenant Mary Phillips had her artillery batteries zeroed in on the alien landing zones. Captain Laura Martinez's infantry companies were dug in along the ridge lines, and Sergeant Amy Peterson's scout teams were providing real-time intelligence on enemy movements. "Sir," Moore called out, "they're moving ground forces toward the colony. No sign of defensive formations or screening units. They're marching in parade formation." Wright couldn't believe what he was seeing. The alien troops were advancing as if they were on a ceremonial parade ground, not a potential battlefield. Their overconfidence was beyond anything he had ever witnessed. "All units, this is Colonel Wright." He spoke into the command net. "These aliens think we're primitive and weak. They expect us to bow down without a fight." He paused, watching as more alien dropships landed. "Let's show them why you never underestimate human Marines. Stand by for combat operations." As the sun set on New Eden, turning the sky a deep crimson, Wright knew the next few hours would teach the Zaxxarian Empire a lesson they would never forget. The aliens were about to learn the hard way that humanity's primitive military forces were anything but weak. Ambassador Carter's hologram flickered one last time. "They've cut diplomatic channels, Colonel. High Commander Vex Thor says we have 10 minutes to surrender." "Acknowledged, Ambassador." Wright straightened his uniform and checked his sidearm. Let them come. The 7th MEU will show them exactly what human ground forces can do. The first shots of the battle for New Eden didn't come from the massive Zaxxarian war machines. Instead, they came from Private Bill Jackson's sniper rifle. The young Marine watched through his scope as his bullet struck an alien officer directly in the face, proving their energy shields had a fatal flaw. They didn't stop simple lead bullets. "Target down," Jackson whispered into his radio. These aliens didn't think to shield against kinetic weapons. Captain Laura Martinez smiled as she received the news in her forward command post. The aliens had seriously underestimated human weapons. She watched through her binoculars as the Zaxxarian forces stopped their parade ground march, clearly confused by their commander's sudden death. "All units, execute Operation Mudbath," Martinez ordered. Across the battlefield, hidden Marine units activated their jammers. The aliens' fancy communication systems went dead, filled with static and human rock music. Lieutenant Daniel Ross led his platoon from their hidden positions in the forest. His Marines had covered themselves in mud to hide from alien thermal sensors. They moved like ghosts between the trees, carrying simple but effective weapons: rifles, grenades, and portable missile launchers. "Look at them panicking," Ross said to his sergeant. The alien troops were shooting their energy weapons wildly into the forest. Their beams lit up the evening sky, but hit nothing. They had never fought an enemy they couldn't see on their sensors. High above, the Zaxxarian ships tried to help their ground forces, but the human Marines were too spread out and too well hidden. The aliens couldn't risk firing their big guns without hitting their own troops. Sergeant Amy Peterson's team struck next. They had buried old-fashioned claymore mines along the aliens' march route. "Fire in the hole," she said calmly, pressing the detonator. The explosions ripped through the alien formation, sending their troops running for cover. The Zaxxarians finally realized this wouldn't be an easy victory. They deployed their heavy combat walkers, huge machines that looked like metal spiders. The walkers stomped forward, crushing trees and firing energy cannons. "Just as we planned," Martinez said. She gave the signal to Lieutenant Ross. His troops emerged from their hidden positions, carrying simple rocket launchers. The Marines fired from different directions, confusing the walker crews. "Aim for the legs," Ross shouted. The rockets hit the walkers' joints, where the armor was weakest. 3 walkers fell, unable to move. Their crews tried to get out but found themselves under fire from Jackson and other snipers. The alien troops tried to regroup, but human tactics kept them confused. Marines would appear, fire a few shots, and disappear back into the forest. The aliens wasted their energy trying to hit targets that were already gone. Colonel Wright watched the battle from his command center. "Send in the Honey Badger teams," he ordered. Marine squads driving simple armored vehicles rushed forward. The vehicles were old and basic, but they were perfect for the muddy battlefield. "This is Honey Badger 2, reported Corporal Steve Adams. "These aliens don't know how to fight in the mud. Their fancy hover tanks are getting stuck." The Zaxxarian forces had never faced an enemy like this. Their advanced technology was being defeated by simple tactics and weapons. High Commander Vexthor watched in horror from his ship as his ground forces fell into chaos. "Impossible," Vexthor shouted. "They are primitives. How are they doing this?" The answer came in the form of more explosions. Peterson's teams had rigged the entire battlefield with traps. The aliens found themselves caught between hidden Marines, buried explosives, and their own confusion. By midnight, the Zaxxarian force was in full retreat. They left behind broken walkers and hover tanks, stuck in the mud or destroyed by Marine weapons. Their simple subjugation mission had turned into a disaster. Martinez stood on a ridge, watching the aliens flee back to their dropships. "Never underestimate us primitives," she said, cleaning the mud from her rifle. Her Marines had proven that fancy technology wasn't everything in a fight. Colonel Wright prepared his report for Earth Command. The Zaxxarians had learned their first lesson about human warfare, but he knew this was just the beginning. The aliens wouldn't stay beaten for long. Next time, they would come better prepared. But so would the Marines of Fort Liberty. They had their own lessons to share. Never underestimate human ground forces, and sometimes the simplest weapons were the best ones. 3 days after their first defeat, the Zaxarians were back. This time, they came with new shields that could stop bullets. But Sergeant Amy Peterson had already figured out how to beat them. "The aliens think they're so smart," she said to her team as they prepared their new weapons. But they forgot about something simple: sound. She held up a modified speaker system that could produce frequencies that hurt alien ears. Major Christopher Lee gathered his officers in the underground bunker of Fort Liberty. The room's walls were covered with pictures of alien equipment, each marked with newly discovered weak points. "They've adapted to our bullets," Lee said, pointing to the new alien shields. "So we'll adapt too. The aliens still can't handle our old-school explosives. And thanks to Sergeant Peterson, we now know their hearing is very sensitive." Outside, the human forces were getting ready. They had spent 3 days preparing the battlefield. Private Claire Duncan and her engineering team had dug hundreds of trenches and foxholes, just like soldiers had done for centuries on Earth. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Duncan said as she helped bury more explosives. Her team had also set up old-fashioned barbed wire, which the alien sensors couldn't detect because it wasn't powered by electricity. The Zaxarians started their second attack at dawn. This time, they moved more carefully, using their new shields. High Commander Vexthor watched from his ship, sure that his troops would win this time. "Begin Operation Rock Concert," Major Lee ordered. Suddenly, hundreds of speakers hidden in the trees started blasting heavy metal music at frequencies that humans couldn't hear, but that drove the aliens crazy. The Zaxarian troops grabbed their heads in pain, their neat formations breaking apart. Lieutenant Paul Baker led the first counterattack. His tanks might have been simple compared to alien hover vehicles, but they worked perfectly in the mud and rain of New Eden. The tanks crashed through the alien lines while they were confused by the sound attack. "Keep pushing," Baker shouted as his tanks fired round after round. The alien shields could stop bullets, but they couldn't handle the bigger shells from the tanks. Explosions lit up the morning sky as more alien vehicles were destroyed. Sergeant Peterson's teams struck next. They had studied how the aliens fought and found another weakness. The Zaxarians always expected attacks from the front. So Peterson's Marines attacked from behind, using simple rope ladders to climb trees and jump onto alien walking machines. "They never look up," Peterson said as her team planted explosives on a walker's joints. "All their fancy sensors, and they forget to watch above them." The walker collapsed as the explosives went off, causing more confusion in the alien ranks. Colonel Wright watched from the command center as his troops pushed the aliens back. The Marines' simple but effective tactics were working even better than before. The aliens had prepared for the last battle, but weren't ready for new human tricks. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Moore, "the aliens are trying to call for help, but our old radio jammers are still working. They can't reach their ships." The aliens had expected the humans to use new technology to fight their shields. Instead, the Marines used tools and tactics that were centuries old. Trenches that didn't show up on sensors, tank traps that worked without power, simple rope ladders and hand signals that couldn't be jammed. Major Lee ordered the final push as the sun reached high noon. The Marine tanks rolled forward behind a wall of smoke from simple smoke grenades. In the confusion, more of Peterson's teams climbed onto the alien vehicles, planting old-fashioned magnetic mines. "Fall back." The alien commander's panicked order came too late. Their neat formations had fallen apart completely. Some alien troops were running away, while others couldn't hear orders over the sound attack. By afternoon, the second alien attack had failed even worse than the first. The Zaxarians retreated, leaving behind more destroyed vehicles and confused troops. They had learned another hard lesson. Humans didn't need fancy technology to win battles. Colonel Wright smiled as he read the day's battle reports. "Send word to Earth Command," he told Moore. "Tell them the aliens are learning, but so are we. And we learn faster." Private First Class John Miller wasn't trying to make a big discovery. He was just cleaning his gear after a battle when he noticed something interesting about a piece of fallen alien armor. There was a small crack where a regular bullet had hit it. "Sergeant, you need to see this," Miller called out, holding up the armor piece. "Look what happens when I pour water on it." The crack in the alien armor grew bigger as the water touched it. The amazing alien metal was weak against plain old water. Word of Miller's discovery spread quickly through Fort Liberty. The aliens had made their armor stronger against bullets and explosions, but they hadn't thought about rain. On a wet planet like New Eden, this was a serious problem. Colonel Wright called an emergency meeting. "The aliens are planning to bomb us from space," he said, showing pictures of the Zaxarian ships moving into attack position. "But thanks to Private Miller, we now know how to hurt them. Operation Thunderstrike begins in 2 hours." Marine Scout Sniper Michelle Thompson lay in the mud, her rifle ready. But today she wasn't aiming at alien soldiers. Her target was the water tanks on their bases. "This is Thunder One, ready to make it rain," she reported. All across the battlefield, other snipers were in position. They had special bullets filled with water. The plan was simple: shoot the alien bases where they stored water, and let nature do the rest. "Thunder teams, you are clear to fire," Wright ordered. Thompson and the other snipers fired at the same time. Their bullets hit the alien water tanks perfectly, causing them to burst. Water sprayed everywhere, covering the alien troops and their equipment. The effect was immediate. The alien armor started to crack and fall apart. Their weapons short-circuited. Even their communication devices stopped working when they got wet. "Look at that," Lieutenant Catherine Brown said as she watched through her binoculars. "Their fancy armor is falling off like wet paper." She commanded her troops to move forward, taking advantage of the confusion. The aliens tried to fight back, but their problems were getting worse. The water had soaked into their bases, damaging their computers and power systems. They couldn't call for help because their communications were down. High Commander Vexthor watched in horror from his ship. His ground forces were falling apart, literally. "Impossible," he shouted. "How can simple water defeat our advanced technology?" Colonel Wright launched the next phase of his plan. Marine units attacked from all directions, using regular rifles and grenades. The aliens couldn't stop them anymore. Their armor was ruined, and their shields were failing. "Push them back," Brown ordered as her company advanced. The Marines moved quickly, throwing water balloons along with grenades. Some aliens tried to surrender, while others ran back to their ships. Thompson and her snipers kept shooting water bullets at any alien who tried to organize a defense. "This is almost too easy," she said, hitting another officer's armor and watching it fall apart. The aliens made one last attempt to save their ground forces. They tried to use their ship's weapons to help, but Wright was ready for this too. He had hidden old-style missile launchers all around the colony. These simple rockets might not destroy the alien ships, but they forced them to stay back. "They're retreating." The happy shout came from multiple radio channels as the alien forces ran back to their ships. They left behind piles of ruined armor and weapons, all destroyed by simple water. Later that day, Wright met with his officers to discuss their victory. "The aliens made a basic mistake," he said. "They built their weapons to fight high-tech enemies. They forgot that sometimes the simplest things are the most dangerous." Miller, the private who discovered the water weakness, got a promotion, but he stayed humble about it. "I just did what Marines always do," he said. "I paid attention to details and used what I learned." The Zaxarians had lost a third time, and this defeat was the worst yet. They had learned another lesson about human forces. Never assume that advanced technology beats good training and simple solutions. The Zaxarians were angry now. After 3 defeats by primitive humans, they sent their best troops. the Crimson Guard. These elite alien soldiers wore blood-red armor and had never lost a battle in 500 years. "Those are not normal alien troops," Lieutenant Catherine Brown said as she watched the red-armored warriors land outside Fort Liberty. Their ships were different too, sleeker and darker than the regular Zaxxarian vessels. Colonel Wright called an emergency meeting in the command bunker. "The Crimson Guard are their best fighters," he explained, "and they've waterproofed their armor. We need new tactics." Staff Sergeant Peter Martinez had an idea. During the previous battles, he had studied how the aliens fought. "They're too perfect," he said. "They follow their training exactly. That means they're predictable." The Crimson Guard attacked at midnight. They moved like machines, every step perfect, every formation exact. Their red armor glowed in the darkness as they marched toward Fort Liberty. "Let them come," Brown ordered her troops. The Marines had spent hours setting up their defenses differently this time. Instead of hiding, they stood in plain sight, but nothing was quite what it seemed. The alien elite forces reached the first defense line. They found empty trenches and broken barriers. "The humans are retreating," the Crimson Guard commander reported to High Commander Vexthor. "Victory will be easy." But Martinez had planned for this. "Now," he shouted into his radio. Suddenly, the empty trenches weren't empty anymore. They were full of Marine robots, simple machines made from spare parts. The robots popped up and started firing in all directions. The Crimson Guard's perfect formations broke apart as they tried to fight the robots. While they were distracted, real Marines attacked from different directions. The aliens' perfect training worked against them. They didn't know how to handle chaos. "Contact Earth Defense Command," Wright ordered. "Tell them to launch the satellites." High above New Eden, simple communication satellites changed position. They weren't weapons, but they could do something just as useful. They could mess up alien targeting systems. Brown's troops pushed forward, using their own chaos to their advantage. They didn't move in straight lines or perfect formations. Each Marine knew the plan but acted independently, making it impossible for the aliens to predict their movements. "They're adapting," the Crimson Guard commander warned as his troops started taking heavy losses. The elite aliens tried to adjust their tactics, but centuries of fighting the same way made it hard for them to change. Martinez sprung another trap. His teams had buried old computer parts all around the battlefield. When activated, they created random electronic signals that confused the aliens' advanced sensors. "Their sensors are useless," Martinez reported. "They have to fight like we do, with their eyes and ears." But the Crimson Guard had never fought without their technology. They began to make mistakes. The battle turned into exactly what the Marines wanted: a messy, chaotic fight. The aliens' perfect training meant nothing when they couldn't see their targets or coordinate their movements. Lieutenant Brown led a charge against the alien center. "Keep them confused," she shouted as her troops attacked from multiple directions. The Crimson Guard's beautiful formations fell apart completely. From his command ship, Vexthor watched in shock as his elite troops retreated. The unbeatable Crimson Guard had been defeated by simple tricks and basic battle tactics. "Status report," Wright asked as the red-armored aliens fled back to their ships. The Marines had won again, but this victory was different. They had beaten the aliens' best troops. "Sir," Martinez reported, "we've captured some of their equipment." The Crimson Guard aren't just retreating. They're scared. They've never lost before. They don't know how to handle it. As the sun rose over New Eden, the Marines of Fort Liberty celebrated their biggest victory yet. They had proved that all the training and technology in the galaxy couldn't beat soldiers who knew how to think for themselves. "Send word to Earth," Wright ordered. "Tell them we don't need fancy weapons or perfect training. We just need Marines who know how to adapt and overcome." High Commander Vexthor faced the angry faces of the Imperial Council on his view screen. The defeat of the Crimson Guard had shaken the entire Zaxxarian Empire. No one could believe their best troops had lost to primitive humans. "You have failed 4 times," the council leader said, his 4 eyes glowing with anger. "Fix this problem, or we will find someone who can." The threat was clear: win or lose everything. On the planet below, Captain William Hayes and his Marines prepared for what they knew would be the biggest fight yet. "They're going to throw everything at us now," he told his troops as they checked their weapons. Scout teams reported massive enemy movement in orbit. The Zaxxarians were bringing in more ships than ever before. But this time, the Marines had a plan that would take the fight to the aliens. "Operation Sunrise is ready," Hayes reported to Colonel Wright. Their plan was bold. Instead of defending, they would attack the alien command ship. It was dangerous, but no one expected the primitive humans to try something so ambitious. Lieutenant Sandra Collins led her force recon teams through the final practice run. They had spent days learning how to use captured alien equipment. "Remember," she told her Marines, "we don't need to understand all their technology. We just need to break it." The Zaxxarians started their attack with a massive orbital bombardment, but they didn't know that most of Fort Liberty was empty. The Marines had moved most of their forces into hidden underground bunkers that Wright had ordered built weeks ago. "Begin Operation Sunrise," Wright ordered as the alien bombs fell on empty buildings. Hayes and Collins led their teams to the secret weapon they had built: simple rockets powered by the same engines as the colony's farming machines. "Launch in 5 minutes," Hayes said as his troops climbed into the rockets. They weren't fancy, but they would get the job done. The aliens were so busy bombing the ground that they didn't watch the sky. Collins checked her team's equipment one last time. They carried basic explosives and the water weapons that had worked so well before. Every Marine also had a simple radio jammer made from spare parts. Rockets away. The launches were nearly silent, using old technology that didn't show up on alien sensors. 20 rockets rose from hidden silos, carrying 200 Marines toward the Zaxxarian command ship. Vex Thor was still arguing with the Imperial Council when the first teams landed on his ship. The aliens had never guarded against boarding actions. They thought humans couldn't reach their ships. "All teams, move in," Collins ordered as her Marines cut through the ship's hull using tools from the colony's mining machines. The aliens inside were completely surprised. Hayes led his team straight toward the ship's power core. "Plant the charges here," he ordered, pointing to spots they had identified from captured alien documents. The explosives were simple mining charges, but they would work just fine. The ship's crew tried to fight back, but they weren't trained for close combat. The Marines moved through the corridors using basic battle tactics that soldiers had used for centuries. Checking corners, providing cover fire, and working as teams. "Command center breached," Collins reported. Her team had fought their way to where Vex Thor was trying to organize a defense. The alien commander couldn't believe humans had dared to board his ship. "Your empire made a big mistake," Hayes said as his Marines secured the ship's vital areas. "You thought better technology meant better warriors. But wars aren't won by technology. They're won by soldiers." On the planet below, Wright watched as confusion spread through the alien fleet. Their command ship had fallen in less than an hour, captured by troops they had called primitive. "Send the message," Wright ordered. Every alien ship received the same video: their high commander surrendering to human Marines who had defeated his best technology, with basic weapons and brave hearts. The Imperial Council watched in shock as their unbeatable fleet fell into chaos. The humans hadn't just defeated their forces, they had shown that the Empire's way of war was fundamentally flawed. 1 week after the capture of the Zaxxarian command ship, Colonel Wright stood in a grand meeting hall on the alien capital world. The Imperial Council had invited him to explain how their mighty empire had been defeated by primitive humans. "Our history is full of war," Wright told the alien leaders. He showed them pictures from Earth's past. Soldiers fighting in trenches, on beaches, and in cities. "We learned our lessons the hard way, by fighting each other for thousands of years." Ambassador Susan Carter stood next to him, helping to explain humanity's long history of warfare. "Your empire got comfortable," she said. You forgot that the best weapons aren't always the newest ones. High Commander Vexthor, now a prisoner, watched from the side of the room. His defeat had changed him. We thought technology made us superior, he admitted. We were wrong. Back on New Eden, the Marines of Fort Liberty were helping clean up after the battles. Private Bill Jackson found some alien soldiers looking at human weapons with great interest. Want to learn how they work? Jackson asked the aliens. To his surprise, they did. Soon he was teaching them about simple but effective human tactics. Lieutenant Catherine Brown led classes for alien officers, showing them how humans trained their troops to think for themselves. Your soldiers are brave, she told them, but they need to learn to adapt when things go wrong. The Imperial Council watched videos of the battles, amazed by how human Marines had used basic tactics to defeat advanced technology. They saw how water balloons had destroyed expensive armor, and how simple radio jammers had confused complex communication systems. This changes everything, the council leader said. Our entire military must learn from the humans. It was a huge change for an empire that had won all its battles the same way for 2,000 years. Sergeant Amy Peterson worked with alien engineers, showing them why simple solutions often worked better than complex ones. Sometimes a rope ladder works better than an anti-gravity belt, she explained, especially when the power goes out. Captain William Hayes met with alien ship designers. They were shocked to learn that his boarding attack had used rockets built from farming equipment. You don't always need fancy technology, he told them. You just need to understand basic principles. The Zaxarian Empire began to change its ways. They still use their advanced technology, but now they also train their troops in basic combat skills. Every alien soldier learned Earth's military history, studying how humans had fought and won against superior forces. Colonel Wright received a message from Earth Command. Other alien species had heard about how the Marines had defeated the mighty Zaxarian Empire. Many of them had canceled their plans to attack human colonies. The best victory is the one that prevents future wars, Wright told his officers. The Marines had not just won a battle. They had shown the galaxy that humanity wasn't weak just because they used simpler technology. Ambassador Carter helped write a new treaty between Earth and the Zaxarian Empire. One important part was that human Marines would help train alien troops. We'll teach them everything, she said, from using simple weapons to thinking on their feet. The Marines of Fort Liberty got a new mission. They would stay on New Eden, but now they would run a training school for alien soldiers. Many Zaxarians wanted to learn the human way of war. Private John Miller, who had discovered the water weakness, summed it up best during a training session with alien troops. Good warriors don't rely on just their weapons. They rely on their brains, their training, and their ability to adapt. As Wright walked through Fort Liberty one last time before heading back to Earth, he smiled at what he saw. Human Marines and alien soldiers were training together, learning from each other. The aliens were finally understanding that true military strength came from more than just technology. We taught them the hard way, Wright said to Carter. But sometimes that's the best way to learn. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate human ground forces, no matter how primitive they might seem.